For the past year or so, I've been rewatching every Marvel movie, from Iron Man through to Avengers Endgame, a sequence which may come to be known as the good ones. And the best of those movies by far are the ones with a strong villain, either charismatic like Loki, or ruthless like Thanos, to really give the movie some proper dramatic stakes. The movies since then have lacked decent villains, but in this one they've introduced Kang the Conqueror, who will be the main MCU villain for the next few years. And I think that's what this film will be most remembered for, because otherwise there's really not much more to it. The first few Ant-Man movies were very grounded, focusing on just a small group of characters in San Francisco, and they had a very family-friendly feel to them, like the kind of high-concept 1980s kids movies, such as Goonies or E.T. or Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. This one has a totally different feel. After about 5 minutes in the familiar setting, the entire cast is zapped into the quantum realm, which only appeared briefly in the first 2 movies. Frankly, this feels like a misstep. It's such a shift in direction. They really should have brought in a director who was more suited to a big special effects movie, as it does feel like Peyton Reed is a bit out of his depth here. To be fair, the visuals are absolutely spectacular, and it's worth seeing on the biggest screen possible, as it won't be nearly as good on the small screen, although you will be able to pause the movie and soak in the details there, which will be a definite plus. Virtually every scene is set in this bizarre quantum dimension, which makes it quite difficult to get a handle on exactly what it is you're meant to be looking at. At least in the Star Wars or Guardians of the Galaxy movies, you do have familiar things like planets and spaceships to ground the fantastic visuals in some level of reality. But here they can just go absolutely crazy, with talking broccoli, living buildings, and skies that look like no planet in the entire cosmos. It's all a bit much, to be honest. 2 hours in the quantum realm was more than enough for me. Jonathan Majors makes a strong impression in his first appearance as Kang the Conqueror. We don't actually learn a great deal about his backstory or powers, which are presumably being saved for another movie. But you do get the general impression that he's tried to conquer the multiverse already, failed miserably, and been exiled to the quantum realm as punishment. Majors is very intense in the role. His character has a chilling intensity about him, and you do feel that he's obsessed with conquering the multiverse and willing to do whatever it takes to fulfill his goal. Although, to be honest, it might have helped if he'd killed off 1 or 2 more characters. That would have really sold his villainy. I was wondering how they might handle MODOK in the movie, as he's one of the more comical Marvel characters, and they've actually managed to make him look even more ridiculous than he does in the comics, which is quite a feat. How they do this is probably the biggest twist in the movie, so I won't spoil it. But it does give the character a lot more depth. And in the end, he does have quite an interesting character arc, despite the disturbing visuals. Michelle Pfeiffer was barely in the last movie, as it was all about the search for her character. But they make up for that here, as she does have a much bigger role, with the whole story centred around her past stay in the quantum realm. And it's great to see her get more screen time, especially in the scenes she shares with Michael Douglas and Bill Murray. When those 3 are all on screen together, the movie really comes to life. Unfortunately, Bill Murray is only in a few scenes, but it's great to see him all the same. Paul Rudd is slightly more restrained than usual in this movie. There's much less comedy this time around, as for most of the movie his character's daughter is in danger, and he's focused on trying to save her. Speaking of which, Cassie Lang is played by Catherine Newton here. She's the 3rd actress to play the part. I guess the girl they cast to play her in Avengers Endgame was good enough for that one short scene, but in this one the part is much bigger, so I guess they went with a bigger name. And they don't come much bigger than the star of Paranormal Activity 4 and Detective Pikachu. They've certainly built up a character here. She's become something of a social justice warrior, which is what evil people used to call good people before they started using the term woke instead. But she does make a good impression here, and you can certainly imagine her going forward with the character if they put her in a Young Avengers movie or series, which I'm guessing is the long-term plan. Evangeline Lilly is probably the weakest link in the cast. She doesn't have very much to do, and her haircut makes her look 10 years older. but then she is an anti-vaxxer, so it's no more than she deserves.
Knowing that Kang is coming back for a bunch of movies further down the line meant that the final confrontation wasn't as cut and dried as it usually is, and there were moments when I thought they might go for a very much more downbeat ending. But in the end they swerve away from that, and it's basically just another happy ending. It feels like they were building up to something much darker, but then changed it at the last minute. Possibly there were reshoots, who knows. But if they did change the ending, I think it was a mistake, as it does mean the whole movie is basically skippable. As with every Marvel movie, there are several post-credit scenes before you can safely leave the cinema. The mid-credit scene is very important, as it shows you exactly who sent Kang to the Quantum Realm in the first place, and also introduces some characters who may well show up in a future movie. The post-credit scene is less essential, as it seems to be basically just a clip from Loki Season 2, so anyone who hasn't seen Season 1 will be left hopelessly confused. And for those who have, it's a very short clip, so probably not worth waiting for. Overall, I would have to say the movie is pretty disappointing. A few good performances and stunning visuals don't really make up for it being a very simple story with not much in the way of depth. Still, there's a third Guardians of the Galaxy movie coming in just a few months, and I would expect that to be a whole lot better, as it's made by James Gunn, who really knows how to make a great superhero movie. Unfortunately for Marvel, he's jumped ship to DC now, so it'll be the last movie of his in this universe, but hopefully it won't be the last good Marvel movie we get. I'm not sure if I'll be doing any more movie reviews before then. Dungeons and Dragons looks good from the trailer, so I might go and see that. But if you don't want to miss any of my movie reviews, you can always subscribe. And in the meantime, you can click the link to see my thoughts on the last Marvel movie, which was extremely different to this one, and put to the light to anyone who says that they're all the same. See you next time.